Today is April 21st in the year 2013. I'm Karen Herman with the Archive of American Television, and it is my absolute great pleasure to be interviewing TV legend Susan Lucci here in Atlanta, Georgia for the Archive of American Television.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be part of this. Thank you.
Well, thanks. It's been a while. We've been trying to get this going for a while, so we're really thrilled.
We're finally in the same city.
Let's hope you say that 3 hours from now. Okay, let's start right from the beginning. What was your name at birth?
Susan Lucci is my name, my maiden name, my given name.
Did you have a middle name?
Yes, Susan Victoria.
Any nicknames growing up?
Not so much growing up. My husband's always called me Susie. So my husband and some of his very close friends and his family calls me Susie. But mostly it's been Susan. Certainly there was that great nickname that Regis Philbin gave me, which is La Lucci. That came later.
How did you get that?
La Lucci? I don't know. You know, sometimes things are just in the air, in the water. I'm not sure. But at the All My Children studio, they started paging me to the set. La Lucci, one of our directors, Henry Kaplan, and our executive producer at the time, Felicia Baer, would page me to the set when they needed me to come and do scenes as Erica Kane, and they called me La Lucci, La Lucci. But Regis, of course, was never in our studio. And when I would go to the Regis Philbin show, Regis would then call me La Lucci. And he's always just made me laugh, and he was tickled. And the name stuck because Regis made it well known. You know, he publicized it.
Do people call you that when you're walking down the street?
Absolutely. Truck drivers call out, firemen, La Lucci, and fans in general, and it's very nice.
When and where were you born?
I was actually born in Yonkers, New York. That was my dad's hometown. And my mother was a nurse at Yonkers General Hospital. And we lived there till I was about 2, and then moved to Long Island.
When were you born?
December 23rd, 1946.
Great. Talk a little bit about your parents, their names, and what you've inherited from them.
Okay. I'm half Italian. My dad's name was Victor Lucci, and my mom is of Swedish descent. Her name is Jeanette Granquist. My mother grew up in a small town in the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania, so small. White Mills is the name of the town. People would ask, where did your mother grow up? And they never asked what street, they asked what house did she grow up in. So very small town.
And what do you think you inherited from them?
Oh, they both were wonderful to me in many, many ways. My mom is still alive, and we're still very close. My dad spent a lot of time with me as a little girl. Walks on the beach in the summertime. He believed very much in education, so he taught me to draw and ride horses. They followed my lead in things that I was interested in, except they did make me take piano lessons, which I was never very good at, and really fought them a lot on piano lessons, but I took them. My mother was wonderful in so many ways, too, because I grew up in a town where everyone else seemed to have blue eyes and fair skin and little turned up noses. And my mother herself is fair, being of Swedish descent, but she really liked, my dad was very dark, and she really liked that. I felt a little bit, when you're a little girl, you want to be just like everybody else. And my mother would always point out the brunette candidates in the Miss America pageant, and legitimately, we'd be rooting for them, and Sophia Loren and Elizabeth Taylor, when I was growing up, and she would, talk in a positive way about them and encourage me to feel good about myself, which I think was a big help in retrospect.
Do you have any siblings?
I have an older brother, Jimmy.
And what kind of kid were you growing up?
Very shy. I was very, very shy. I am much better now, but it's been an ongoing, anybody who's shy, it sometimes is like, the elephant in the room. It's like palpable. But I'm much better now. But as a little girl, my mother actually locked me out of the house. I remember this like it was yesterday. It was a summer day. These were sweeter times. I was 3.5. It's not like, I was in the house for a long time, but she wanted me to go out and play with the neighborhood children. And I was shy. And I remember knocking on the screen door. And my grandmother, who lived with us, who I adored, my mother's mother, till she died when I was about 11. But so she said, Jeanette, you cannot lock this little girl out of the house. And my mother said, she's got to go play with the other kids. And I did. I went down the block on my tricycle, and I was immediately pushed off the bicycle into the street. Came back crying. My mother was like, "Oh no, now she's never going to play." But I did. I went back out, and I, as a little girl, used to love to watch. Well, throughout my teenage years, to watch TV, and I used to make up stories and act out all the parts. When I went out to play with the other kids, I enlisted them. And happy for me, they liked to do it. So we made up stories, acted out all the parts. In the house, I would do the same thing, but I would play all the parts too, with the different voices. And my parents were very happy. They thought, oh, finally she's not that shy. She's got kids in the house. It was really just me. But that's how I played. It was natural for me to want to be an actress. It's just how I played as a child. My parents' Broadway cast albums and learned the lyrics, and went in front of my mother's mirror, and she was great. She let me play in her drawer, her top drawer, which had scarves and long gloves. And in those days, my mother used to wear her hair in a chignon, and they had those expandable, sparkly things. I could make it a crown. I could do a lot of things.
You mentioned TV. What were some of your favorite shows growing up?
As a little girl, first of all, I have an older brother, Jimmy, so I had to watch all the boy shows, Sergeant Preston of the Yukon, and Hopalong Cassidy, and the Lone Ranger, and Zorro, and those. But I also, there was something called the Children's Hour, and, the Mouseketeers, American Bandstand, which I loved. But as I got to the place, and I would get up early in the morning, and there used to be a test, a sound and a test panel on TV, and I would watch that. I mean, I just wanted to watch TV. But there was a show called Winky Dink and You, and you could put this plastic screen on the TV and draw, and it got me up close to the TV, and I knew that I wanted to be in there. I didn't just want to be watching, I wanted to be in there. And I remember going up and looking to the sides, thinking, are there people over there too? What's going on over there? As I got to be, watching by myself, I watched so many movies on TV. There was the early show, the $1 Million Movie, the late show. I would sneak up at night when I was supposed to be in bed because I hated to go to sleep, and I'd watch TV. My parents' TV was on the far wall of their bedroom, and I could take my pillow and sneak in the hallway and lay down and watch Armstrong Circle Theater and Playhouse 90 and all those movies. And they didn't know I was up, and I got to see a lot.
How did you, in terms of your interest in acting, did you also pursue it in school?
I did pursue acting in school. It was very, very lucky for me that my parents moved to Garden City on Long Island, where they had an amazing drama department. So that once I got to high school, we had a drama teacher who rehearsed us the same way you rehearse a Broadway play. It was such a great head start to start learning to be an actress. At the time, I was 14 years old. And she prepared us all she was very strict. She was also very funny. She looked like Lucille Ball. She wore green nail polish, and she was very flamboyant and very demanding. I was a cheerleader too, and she hated that I was a cheerleader because I wasn't just all, on her schedule at her time. I would wear my cheerleading outfit to rehearsals, which she hated. But I was able to do both, and I did, and just had a chance to play some wonderful parts even in high school.
With your classmates, did they kind of know that you were going to go on?
I think they did. In fact, the first time I got to act outside of my parents' bedroom in front of the mirror, or with the bathroom with the white curtains as a bride veil, or an Arab princess, I would sing Bubbles, Bangles, and Beads from Kismet, and, like that. But the first time I was 11, and I was my first year as a Girl Scout. I'd been a Brownie, then I was a Girl Scout. I went to a very strict Catholic school as a little girl. We weren't allowed to talk during recess. And, at lunch. We could talk outside, but not in the cafeteria. And after lunch one day, we were walking out to the playground, and my Girl Scout leader and her assistant came down the hallway. The other little girls had started to say, we're in a play, and I didn't know anything about it, and I felt so bad. But my Girl Scout leader came running down the hall with a script in her hand. She said, Susan, we've been looking for you. We want you to play the lead in our play. It's called Cindy Ellen, and it was a takeoff on Cinderella. And as I told you, there were no dark-haired dolls. There were no dark-haired angels to put on the tree at Christmas. I don't want to overstate this, but for them to call on me to play the Cinderella part was quite amazing. and the fact that they knew that I would want to do that and that they thought I could do it, I just thought I liked to do it. I didn't know anybody would ever know that I wanted to do it. I was 11, and that was the first time that I was on stage in that play.
Wow. And then after high school, you went to college?
I did. I majored in drama at Marymount College in Tarrytown. The drama faculty was all from Yale and Royal Shakespeare Company in London and Martha Graham Dance. So I had amazing teachers. And they were all, because Tarrytown was only 45 minutes from Manhattan, they were all working in the business as well. So the man who lit our shows was also working on Off-Broadway, and Ron Wayand, spectacular head of our drama department, was part of the Lincoln Center Rep Company and Cafe La Mama, did experimental theater in New York, and very, very lucky.
Did your parents support you in your aspirations?
Up to a certain point, my parents supported me in my aspirations. They were proud of me, and they were at every show. But my father, there was no one in my family who had ever been in show business. My grandmother, my mother's mother, my Swedish grandfather went back to Sweden when my mother was a little girl and wrote her a letter saying he didn't want to be married anymore. This is a long time ago. My grandmother was really ahead of her time. She refused to take alimony. She had 3 children, no child support, but she played the piano really well. And she started an orchestra in Pennsylvania in the Pocono Mountains and played to make a living, and also played for Broadway tryout shows that would come through Milford, Pennsylvania. So I'd like to think that the spirit that I had to then pursue my dreams came from my grandmother. But my parents didn't want me in the business. They didn't know anybody in the business. They only knew, like so many parents, reading the newspapers. They read about rejection. They read about drugs. They read about a lot of things that they wouldn't want me exposed to. But when I got to Marymount, I majored in drama. I told my father that I would be a teacher, which was more palpable to my parents. But then when it came time to graduate, I told my father I had no teaching credits. And, there's nothing to do than just go with it. And so that's what I did. Yeah.
While you were at college, you had a little dalliance with the Miss Universe contests.
You have really done your homework. Yes, I did. In my senior year of college, one of the actors that I had worked with in our student productions, because in a classroom situation, Marymount was a women's college. We played all the parts, men and women, all of it, just a stretch. But when we cast productions, they were cast in New York. With professional actors, and one of those actors was also a director. And in my senior year of college, he called and he said that he knew the owner of the Miss Universe franchise, and would I be interested in coming down and meeting at a press breakfast and meeting them and seeing if I would qualify to run for Miss New York State Universe pageant. And so I did, and I made the finals for Miss New York State Universe, and but then the finals were being held at the Nevele Country Club in the Catskill Mountains, the bathing suit competition and all that, the same weekend that I had to take my 4-year oral comprehensive exams to get my degree. And at that point, my dad did prevail, He said, A, I don't want you parading around in a bathing suit in front of all these guys in the Catskills. And secondly, I've paid for your college education and you've got to graduate. So I took the exams and did graduate.
So after you graduated, how were you planning on breaking in?
I had no idea. I had no idea. As I said, I had no experience in the business at all. I spoke to Mr. Wayan, the head of the department, in the spring. He had told me that I had been asked to audition for Yale School of Drama for grad school and for Juilliard. It was their first year that Juilliard was going to have a grad school in drama. It was the John Houseman Theater was the first year, and I didn't want to go to school anymore. So he helped me craft a resume, and he taught me some of the ropes about going to Manhattan and making rounds. And I told you I was very shy, except then. I was not shy at all. He told me about something called the Ross Reports, which listed agents. And I was told that if I went to an agency unannounced and met the receptionist, if they thought that you could get work and therefore the agency could get a percentage, they would introduce you to their agents. And at that point, because I'd wanted to be an actress my whole life, I wasn't shy. And I would go meet these receptionists, and they would call out the agents. I met the agents and got submitted for things, and I was on my way.
What were some of the first things you did in television?
The first thing I did was something called The Color Girl. It was at the Ed Sullivan Theater, and I would go there and sit on a stool while they lined up cameras and corrected their color. And it was thrilling for me to be in a theater in New York. And I had grown up watching the Ed Sullivan Show with my parents on Sunday night, and I could feel all that in that building. And on top of it, the stage manager, real seasoned stage manager, so nice. He took me under his wing and he showed me where the lights were and what backstage looked like in the control room, and it was really a great experience for me doing that.
Did you ever get to actually see any of the performances? Or were you in and out before that?
No, I was in and out before any of the performances. But it got me, in the door. And I did some very small things in a couple of films that summer. One was called Me, Natalie, with Patty Duke. And the other was, it was with Ellen McGraw. She was the star, and I think it was her opportunity in film. Oh, I don't remember the name of that movie, but anyway, I was an extra. I was a college girl in the dorm, and that also got me around the business.
Was there a certain type that you were auditioning for?
At that point, as a young actress, any auditions would be really cattle calls because I was brand new. And at that stage of the game, there's so many kids from all over the country, who want to do something. So I'd be there with, tall redheads and short blondes and me a brunette. And so it was everybody, who was just the right age at that point. And it was that summer that I got a call to go and meet the casting director, Joan Dincheco, for ABC. And see about a show that they were thinking about doing in the future called All My Children.
Now, before we go there, it was Goodbye Columbus was the fun.
Goodbye Columbus, yes, thank you.
Okay, so All My Children, talk about, really break it down for us how you were cast on that series.
Oh, the original Go-See interview with the casting director and Bud Kloss, who was then the producer, and Doris Quinlan, the executive producer, and Felicia Baer, who became a producer later on but was the associate. That was the first meeting. It was a really hot day in July, summertime, hot, humid, sticky in New York. I have naturally curly hair, which at the time I was told probably made me too ethnic, seemed to be the word they were saying. I was told I probably would never work in television because I didn't at least have blue eyes. And but dark hair, olive skin, dark curly hair, not good. So I thought, oh, it's so hot, my hair's really curly. So I wrapped a scarf around my head backwards and hid all my hair and went in to the go-see meeting. And we had a good meeting, and they all said they'd like me to come back for the audition. Probably in about 6 months they'd be seeing people. And as I was leaving, Bud Kloss and Joan Dincheco, the fabulous casting director, asked me if I had any questions. And I said, do you want to see my hair? And they said, no, we just know we want to see you come back. And sure enough, they did. They called me back 6 months later, and it was 5 rounds of auditions. There were, hundreds of young girls who auditioned for this part of Erica Kane.
What do you think they saw in you in that first meeting? Do you know?
Well, I don't know, because Agnes we didn't meet until after she saw my screen test, and that was the 5th callback that they put me on camera. And what I've been told by Agnes and others is that when she saw the screen test, that she saw my eyes and she said, those are Erica's eyes. It's really sweet.
That is. What were you told about the character of Erica Kane when you first came in?
I was told that she was the naughty girl in town. She was the troublemaker. That she collected boys, mostly other girls' boyfriends, to put notches in her belt. And she was the daughter of Mona Kane, who had a drinking problem, and her father, Eric Kane, who was a famous film producer, who left her mother when Erica was 9. Started playing Erica. She was a 15-year-old high school girl. And the audition scene, which Agnes and I played the scene together, actually, a couple of years ago. The scene was a 15-year-old Erica getting ready for her math tutor to come. This was the audition scene. And Mona really wanting Erica to study math to get ready for her math tutor. But Erica was putting on her mascara in the mirror, and Mona is behind her just, tearing her hair out. And Erica saying, he's very cute, and he doesn't care if I know math, and I just want to, have him as my boyfriend, like that. And it was 8 pages, and it was knockdown, drag-out fight between this mother, 15-year-old girl, and her mother. And when I saw that scene, I thought, wow, whoever wrote this, because I didn't know about Agnes Nixon. I was ignorant. So I just thought, whoever wrote this is brilliant. This is real. This is how real mothers and daughters, when they're 15, talk to each other. And in those 8 pages, she established character, relationship, there was humor, there was love, and even though they were fighting, it's fantastic.
What did you pull from to create the character for that audition?
Well, I had great teachers. I had great teachers in college. I had great teachers in New York. I studied with Wynn Hanman at the American Place Theater. Later with Harold Klorman in his midnight classes. But I would say every day of my life I call on those things that I was taught. And basically I was trained in method acting, and it's a lot of recalling from your own life, whether it's literally what's in the script or not, but a lot of recall. And my own mother and I used to laugh when she would see those scenes, and a lot of 15-year-old girls roll their eyes at their mother's good common sense, but the girl doesn't want to hear it.
Was there any trepidation for you playing a 15-year-old girl? You were in your early 20s at the time.
Yeah, no, I was... mostly you play down in age across the board, and it's good because you have a little life experience to draw on, to play it. No, so no trepidation there, no.
And when did you find out that you got the part?
It was November. We started on the air in All My Children in January of 1970. So the November before, I was auditioning, and I think it was the very end of November. It was freezing, it was raining. I was sitting in the lobby. I'd been married for a couple of months. I was just about to turn 22. Sitting in that lobby, my husband was going to pick me up, and Bud Kloss, the producer, just after my screen test, walked through that lobby. He was leaving for the day, and he saw me sitting there, and he turned around with a smile and kind of a devilish look in his eye, and he said, "We'll be talking to your agent in the morning." So I kind of thought I probably got it then.
And had you watched soap opera? You mentioned all the TV you watched as a kid. Were you also a fan of soaps as a kid?
I was. Actually. I used to watch soaps at lunchtime with my mother and my mother's best friend and her little girl, who was my best friend at the time. We watched Search for Tomorrow and The Guiding Light, Love of Life. And then when I got into junior high, I would run home to watch Another World and Dark Shadows. I loved Dark Shadows when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm. And did you ever see yourself, is that something you wanted to do in terms of acting?
I just wanted to be an actress. Honestly, I wanted to be an actress, whether it was film or also growing up in a suburb of New York. Broadway was also part of it. When I graduated from college, I went to New York. I didn't go to LA. So really, it didn't matter to me what the medium was going to be. I just knew I wanted to be an actress.
What about your peers? Was it a stigma to be in soaps?
Certainly to the head of the drama department at Marymount. He graduated from Yale School of Drama, Paul Newman's class, and he was Lincoln Center rep. I mean, he wanted me to do theater. That was the thing he really wanted me to do. And if not, film. I mean, TV never came into the conversation. Daytime TV, certainly not. In fact, when I read for the part, and I loved the part so much, I knew he wasn't going to be very happy if I took that part. And I spoke to my agent at the time and said, what if this is awful? You know, what if I don't like this? Because I was only going to be on once in a while playing the bad girl in town, just like kind of every other Tuesday to kind of stir the pot and disappear. In short order, I was on a lot. But I kept thinking, if Mr. Wayne could see what I see, if he could read this audition script, he would know why. Because at that time, this was before the Brat Pack. I mean, this was before films or television shows were centered on teenagers. And mostly, you know, the great parts were Tennessee Williams, The Glass Menagerie, which I wouldn't be cast in, The Rose Tattoo, which I was cast in. You know, those kinds of things I could do. But otherwise, the teenage girl was kind of just, you know, not a focal part. And this part was not only focal, as it turned out, but also so well written and so dimensional and so many possibilities. And a year after I took it, he actually took part in an interview that TV Guide did on me, and I read that he said he thought that I was doing a really, really good job, and that I had grown into a very sensitive and terrific young actress, and that meant the world to me. And we stayed in touch for many years until he passed away.
Oh, that's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about the first few episodes that you did, and coming to the stage, and what that experience was like for you.
I was thrilled to be in the ABC studio and to work with Frau Heflin, who had been paired with me from the very, very first audition. We shared a dressing room for 16 years, I think it was, until we moved our facility to the studio where we shared with a view. And then we all had individual dressing rooms. But Frau and I were paired from the beginning, thrilled to work with her, thrilled to work around Ruth Warwick, who would tell stories of the Mercury Theater and Orson Welles. Frau Heflin, who played my mother, had been on stage with Charles Laughton. She had worked all over the world and in New York with Marlon Brando, and I remember Mama, and oh my goodness, she and her husband were part of the McCarthy blacklisting. I mean, to hear these stories from women actresses who had lived through all of this history, and they were telling me about it. What an opportunity as a young actress, and to be around them when they were getting their notes from the director, because they would assemble us as a group. They called it red chairs. We would sit in these red director's chairs, and so we were kind of told how bad we were and how we had to be much better in about a minute and a half to go and do it for real. But as a young actress, to be able to sit there and listen to the critique of other people, some veterans, some my contemporaries, I learned a lot that way too. We used to rehearse the show as written, as if it were a full-length play. We rehearsed it from beginning to end, and then we did a dress rehearsal from beginning to end. And if your hair got wet during the course of the show, you went back to hair and makeup and got it redone. I don't know how we did it, but we did it that way for many, many, many years. And we did. Mostly, if I wasn't called on set, I stayed in my dressing room studying my lines. And as I said, I had been very shy as a little girl growing up, and I basically didn't come out unless I was supposed to. I was very much in my room or on the set.
Yeah, you mentioned those notes. Was there a particular note that you would get that, from the director about your work?
Well, we all got notes, and it was great, But there was one director, Henry Kaplan, who was very, very colorful and wound up being the dearest man and a really good friend. But when I first met Henry Kaplan, I was maybe on the show for a year and a half, maybe 2 years, still in my early 20s. I didn't know how to take him. And he would say, before I went on camera, things like, "You are as funny as a fish. You are as sexy as a fish." And then, you'd have to go out and try and play the scenes. And it would tie me up in knots. I would feel really terrible. One day, I had scenes where I had to have a fight with Mona, my mother, and I was supposed to pick up my suitcases, open the door, leave the door, deliver a parting insult to my mother, and close the door, slam out, and have won the argument. But I had all these suitcases. And in rehearsal, they were the hard kind of suitcases. And I thought, well, maybe I'll speak to props and see if I can't just have the soft suitcases, because then I can kind of tuck them under my arm. And I did, and for dress rehearsal, I used the soft suitcases. Henry Kaplan was furious at me. He said that I was completely unprofessional. How dare I do that? And this is in front of everybody, too. And there was very little time for having lunch at all my children. So I had this yogurt with me in the red chairs while I was getting my notes, and I was so upset. He was talking to me. I was stirring, and I thought, I just better just now leave. I heard what he said, and I'm going to go now to my dressing room. I have to get out of here before I throw this at Henry Kaplan. So I left the studio floor. When I got out, I just couldn't contain myself anymore. And there was an empty control room, and I threw it. This is sort of a famous story. I threw it at the control panel, which is not a good thing to do. There was yogurt everywhere, all over the TVs, all over the controls. It was an empty, they were not using this control, but still, what a mess. I was so embarrassed. I went into my dressing room, and then Fra came in, Fra Heflin. And apparently in the wind-up, I also had gotten yogurt all over my hair in the back and on my velvet jacket. She came and she said, "Oh, honey, what happened?" And so I told her what happened. The associate producer came. She wanted to know why I was so upset. I told her, I felt so bad I couldn't exit with the big suitcases. I just needed the soft ones. I didn't mean to do anything unprofessional. I was very sorry. And meanwhile, we have to go do the show. And she said, "Don't worry, it's fine, it's fine." Wardrobe did their miracle work on the jacket. Hair came in, cleaned off the yogurt. I had paper towels trying to clean off the yogurt. And sweet Henry Kaplan came to me after the show. And he said to me, "I never meant to upset you." He said, that's my sense of humor. And the more seasoned actresses who had known Henry, they told me that too, but I had been taking it, I just didn't know how to take him, and I had been physically feeling sick for 4 days, and then that yogurt incident was the culmination. Anyway, then the janitor came and he said, "What flavor was that? Because that is really sticky. That is horrible." It was raspberry. It was everywhere. Anyway.
Well, you're lucky it was decades before Twitter.
Yes, exactly.
Let's talk about the character of Erica Kane. I mean, to play a character for that long, I know there's a lot going into it. But talk about her first years and her backstory.
Well, Erica's backstory was that her dad left her mother to be a famous film director in Hollywood. He had a very big career, and Erica was 9 years old. Erica always felt that it was her fault. On the outside, she blamed her mother. That's why she was always so angry at Mona, even though she loved her mother. But deep inside, Erica always blamed herself that she wasn't lovable enough. And her father, in fact, never wanted to spend time with her, just sent money, cars, clothes, but basically kept Erica at arm's length until she was just about to have her 14th birthday. And she begged him, could she come to Hollywood and see him? And he finally gave in. And when she went to Hollywood, this is backstory. This happened right before the show began. And when she went to see her father in Hollywood for her 14th birthday, he had a birthday cake and only one guest. And it was an actor who he was trying to get to do his next movie, and a contemporary of Erica's father. And he was a pedophile. And Eric Kane, for whom Erica was named, knew this and left him alone with his daughter. And Erica was raped at 14. And subsequently, this was tremendous trauma, really heinous situation. But she became pregnant from this rape. And, she was 14. And her mother, Mona, decided that Erica should give the baby up, not have an abortion, but have the baby, give the baby up. And so Erica did, never having even seen the baby. And then later on, many years later, we had Kendall come into the scene, Kendall being that baby that Erica gave up.
How much did you know about that history when you first started the show?
I didn't at first. That evolved. I knew that Erica, the reason she was trying to collect all these boys was she was looking for love. She was looking for, some sort of assurance that she was lovable, because deep down she felt she wasn't, and that's why her father left. That much I knew.
Do you think that stuck with her character all the way through the end?
I think it stuck with her all the way through. I think Erica, not to overstate it, but I think she had a hole in her heart, and she could never fill it.
Do you think there's something that could fill it?
I'm not sure, because she also, and it was these wonderful directors who we would talk about this, and they would say that's why she also pushes these boys away and pushes men away, because it's what she knows, that abandonment. So there was a lot of complication in that character, who ultimately was the woman people love to hate, and ultimately so much fun to watch, but there was a lot of, deep sadness in her too.
When did you know the character was almost a breakout character, really, for the show?
The show was a breakout show, and 6 months in we knew, because suddenly we were being invited to Princeton to speak, and around the country, and people were writing books, and you could see it. It was suddenly mainstream, and this is before people even taped shows. I was getting letters from kids from colleges all over the country, and fraternities at MIT, and at Stanford rather, and professors at MIT, and so it was the kids, but also the professors who were watching, and men as well as women, and sports figures, and Sammy Davis Jr., Carol Burnett. So thrilling.
If someone had never seen All My Children, how would you describe it?
I would describe it as a scene of multi-generations, multiple families, a lot of heart, a lot of humor, some glamour. And these were all firsts. This was all Agnes Nixon. This was her vision. And no cardboard characters. Everybody with their complications and interesting, surprising things about them.
How closely did you work with Agnes Nixon?
For many years, I worked with Agnes Nixon only through what I was seeing, what I was reading. And what I was reading, oh my goodness. I was reading such incredible material. I saw Agnes the first time at that last audition, the fifth audition. I saw out of the corner of my eye this petite, very pretty blonde woman running quickly down the hallway in the studio. And it was the first time, I remember what she was wearing. It was the first time I ever saw a successful New York City woman wearing the clothes that I had only seen in fashion magazines. She was wearing like a cocoa brown Yves Saint Laurent pantsuit, and I knew that because I had just seen it when I was in college, just before that, in a fashion magazine, and she was carrying like a cappuccino bag, alligator bag. And I thought, wow, that's Agnes Nixon, wow. And then I really didn't see Agnes for many, well, I saw her at there was a book written, and she asked me if I would come to the launch party of a very famous writer's book, and I did. And we were both asked to appear at one of her talks, and she asked me to come to her home in Rosemont, Pennsylvania. And actually, she rode the train with me from New York. And on that train ride, and I was so, thrilled to be in her presence and a little bit intimidated, and but she was so lovely and so accessible. And we got to talking about, she has Irish ancestors, and we talked about the Ouija board, which she believed in. She asked me if I did, and I said I had only played as a girl at slumber parties, but she told me some pretty fascinating stories that made me think, well, maybe there was something to it. And then when I got to her house, she worked the Ouija board with me, and she proved to me that there was something to it, at least when Agnes was working it. But beyond those times, there was not much, personal contact. And I was told that Agnes preferred to see on camera what she saw, and what she saw on camera then fed her part of her creative juices, to go ahead and write the story.
Did you ever talk to her about the character, Erica Kane?
Much later, yes, much later. And now Agnes and I speak all the time, and I feel so thrilled to have Agnes in my life. I just adore her and admire her, and very lucky to be her friend. But yes, we did talk about Erica. Yes. And but everything that we talked about, I could get it from her writing.
Did you ever know in advance the character arc of a story, or
every once in a while? In fact, Agnes was so generous. I had a miscarriage before I had my. This is in my real life. I had a miscarriage before I had my daughter, and Agnes wanted to write a storyline where Erica lost a baby, and she called me to see would that be all right with me. Could I handle that? And I thought that was so considerate of her to do, and I said I could. Very considerate of her. Turned out to be a very difficult thing for me to do, but I didn't know it when I said yes, and I'm glad I said yes. We got through it.
Did you ever suggest a story for Erica?
No, not really. I just remember before the Tom Cudahy character came on, I remember thinking probably Erica would be with, she's always looking for love, and Tom Cudahy was not husband number one. So by that time, she was looking and looking. I thought she might be very attracted to an athlete, and then they brought Tom Cudahy on, who was an ex-football player who owned a restaurant. But no, I never felt I never. Writing and creating in that way is a whole separate talent, and I felt such a lucky actress. I had this amazing material handed to me. There was nothing I wanted. I was getting all this amazing material, and I in no way wanted to step on any of the writer's creativity. It was a very, very happy. Agnes calls it a collaboration. She's very generous in that. To me, this is Agnes's creation. I was lucky to get it. Had great teachers, so I had the eyes and ears to appreciate it, see what was there. But she calls it a collaboration, so honored.
Were there times when you get the script and you're like, oh my gosh, how is this going to get resolved? Or, were you worried that Erica's gone too far? too far?
There was one time that really sticks out of my mind where I thought maybe Erica, they had gone too far, and it became one of the most iconic scenes, Erica fighting the grizzly bear. We shot on location in Canada, way north in Canada, And Adam Chandler had kidnapped Erica Kane, and Erica was trying to escape, and she encountered this grizzly bear. And the scene was that Erica yelled at the grizzly bear and won the argument. And I remember saying to the producer at the time, Jackie Babin, I will try anything in rehearsal. But I just said going in, I said, Jackie, don't you think we've gone a little too far with this? She said, no, it'll be great, try it. I said, well, I'll try it. And we did it in one take, and they all loved it, and that was that.
Well, you pulled it off. I mean, that's something.
That bear did not want to work. It was a hot day.
That's funny. You had mentioned looking for love. Talk a little bit about Erica's love life and all the husbands. You probably have the list memorized.
Yeah, I think it's Erica Kane, Martin, Brent, Cudahy, Chandler, Roy, Montgomery, Merrick, Montgomery. I think something like that. So there were 11 marriages, but not that many men. Maybe 8 men. Some were, repeats, and some were not legal. And some of the loves of her life were really the men who she didn't marry, the men who got away. Mike Roy, for one. Nick Davis, her mother's best friend. It was a very early relationship, the teenage Erica and her mother's best friend.
Were there any that you think could have worked in that sense?
Well, Erica, always meant it when she said, I do. She meant it at the time. She's very, hopeful that each one would work. But I told you she had that other thing where she would push them away. She would push. I mean, I don't know what man could stay. Jack Montgomery stayed for a long time, but at that last show at All My Children, he walked out the door. Erica said, I'm going to get him back. Opal was not so sure. And Jack said he was leaving for good. And then there was that movie producer who was offering her dream of a lifetime. So she's always been conflicted.
Talk about working with the actors that played all those.
Oh, well, lucky me. I got to work with wonderful actors. Wonderful actors. David Canary, this was not a happy love relationship between Erica and Adam, but I got to work with David Canary and always loved working with him.
You had a marvelous scene, the food fight scene.
The food fight scene is one of my favorite scenes we ever did. It was a 13-page scene. B.H. Barry, the famous fight director, choreographed this. It was highly choreographed. As I said, it was 13 pages. We felt we wanted to get it in one take because it was very complicated. You certainly couldn't do a pickup. Once I'd squeezed the grapes over his head, there was no going back. So we rehearsed. We learned the choreography in the morning. And we rehearsed ourselves when we could. The cameraman stayed in during lunch, and we went on the studio floor. We all just stayed in and ran it as much as we could. And we shot it about 9:30 at night. We did it in one take, and we had the time of our lives. We had so much fun doing that scene, one of my favorite scenes ever.
How was it doing, a lot of times you had to have intimate scenes with a lot of these men. How was the filming of that as an actress?
Well, I always loved those scenes. In terms of the relationships always moved forward with these scenes, and I loved that. I always had on a nude color bodysuit. We were always very choreographed. The crew always came around during those scenes. But everyone was very protective. And when we were playing the scenes, you just really did feel like it was just the two of you. Although, certainly there were cameras and lights and crew all around, but they were the crew was fantastic at All My Children, as was the cast. I mean, and we were very, very, very much an ensemble. Every level, everyone, very much an ensemble. So everyone was very protective of each other. It's a very trusting atmosphere, a very creative atmosphere. It's great.
Did you feel that way all through all the decades?
Almost all the way through, which is pretty good considering how long we were on the air. Mostly.
Do you want to talk about where things faltered a bit, or?
I don't really want to spend a lot of time there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Talk about Erica's sense of fashion. How that compared to your own sensibilities.
Well, I loved the fashion. I always loved fashion. My mother handed me a 17 magazine this summer. I was 11 and a half. She said, I think you'll like this. She was right. I did. And my grandmother and my mother both always loved fashion and taught me a lot. But in any case, loved Erica Kane's fashion. Loved the same clothes. The only difference was that I would wear these Dolce & Gabbana dresses to a cocktail party, and Erica would wear them on the plane. So that was the difference.
And how about her hair?
Oh my goodness, the hair. When I look at the clips of all my children throughout the time, it's like a history lesson in hair. There are times that my hair got so big during the 80s, I don't know how they got me on a TV screen. I don't know how they fit me in a frame. But those were the times, and I guess you had to fill out from your shoulder pads your hair, so I don't know. And large earrings.
Did you have a favorite style from all those years?
Not the late 80s. That was not good. I think I always felt like now is better. Now is better.
Okay. And how important was Erica's career to her?
Very, very important. The main driving thing for Erica was love, was finding love. She was not power hungry. She was not mean and manipulative for its own sake or for her ego. You didn't want to cross Erica because then she would get you, or she'd try to. That would become very important to her. But finding love was the most important thing. The career thing took her by surprise. I mean, she dropped out of high school in her senior year to marry Jeff Martin, who she convinced to finish his medical studies, not at Stanford where he was, but to come to Pine Valley U and finish. So, yeah. But she turned out to be very street smart, and she turned out to be a quick study. And she turned out to have Palmer Cortland show her the ropes in terms of business. And even Warren Buffett came on and was her white knight. So she learned quickly. But she didn't necessarily want all that as much as she wanted love.
Talk a little about the kind of mother that she was.
This was a wonderful surprise, I think, to the audience. That Erica, because she was always very willful and self-involved, I don't think before she had Bianca that anyone would have thought she would be a good mother. But she was like a lioness with her children. And that also fit. It just was a surprising fit. All that spirit in her turned into this lioness of a mother. Which was great, and great for me to play.
Over the years, there have been a lot of producers that were running the show. Are there any that you particularly worked well with?
The producers?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't think I ever disliked any of the producers. Felicia was spectacular. Jean Burke was spectacular. Julie Carruthers, our final producer. We had a producer, Bjorn Winters, who was Danish. He was so flamboyant and so colorful and so creative. And I hope that I'm saying his name correctly because it's been a while since I've said his name out loud. But he was delightful. We also got a lot done. There were days we would start in the morning out at a racetrack in Bridgehampton. Erica was driving a race car. Danny Sullivan came and gave me race car driving lessons so I could look like I really knew what I was doing because I was supposed to win the race and put on the race gear and all that. So we'd start in Bridgehampton. I'd be driving a race car. We'd finish there, go to the airport, fly to South Carolina, to Charleston, and put on a ball gown and dance in the garden with Travis Montgomery, thousands of candles, and dance till about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So this was a long day, but we could do it, and we did it, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. The first location ever was done Bjorn. We went to St. Croix on location, and this was also interesting. He would say things to me like, "Okay, so then you're going to dive in the water off a boat," and this was after Jaws came out. We had worked all day, and he said, "Because you're going to do that tomorrow, you need to learn how to snorkel tonight." And so they put the lights on in the pool at the hotel we were staying at like 10 o'clock at night. I got snorkeling lessons. And then the next day we went out on a boat, and they had me dive off the boat. I had never dived off a boat. I'd never dived off a boat, but he said I was going to do it, so I said, all right, I'll do it. And just as I was about to dive in, I said this was after Jaws, the head cameraman, Bobby Bear, came over to the end of the boat. I'm getting ready to do this, and he started singing, bum, 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 bum. But I was kind of like mid-dive, so there was no going back. And so I did, and we got the shot, and no sharks came, and we lived to tell the story.
How much of your days were spent, do you think, like in studio versus on location?
Most always in a studio. We spent most times in a studio. Some of them were, very long days and into the night. And once we moved to LA, we would do both. We would maybe start in the studio, go on location, come back to the studio. So, we were doing multiple shows. The last several years, we were doing multiple shows a day.
And what would a week in your life be like at that point in terms of getting the script and getting?
Well, we usually got the scripts, and this remained kind of consistent always. That we would get the script a week to 10 days ahead of time. The scripts, and Erica was a very busy character, I'm happy to say, and so I had a lot of scripts. And generally, I would set aside a chunk of time, sometime on the weekend, usually on a Sunday, and read for the week, and then I lived about an hour and a half outside the city. And so driving into the studio in the morning, I would commit those scenes to memory. Fortunately, I had a good memory, the ability to memorize fairly quickly. Although I stayed with the script all day. I had lunch with the script. I always had the script because I didn't want to miss anything because the writing was so good. And I thought, I do not want to miss any of the nuance. I don't want to be the weak link here. I want to really do my best. So, but it was in the car that I would memorize. And I left a little of it still to be memorized because there would be changes made during the rehearsals. Maybe another actor had an issue with a certain interchange, and so some of it would be changed, so best not to make it too cemented. So you could bounce off each other and see where it was going to, like that. But I will say, because I drove through the park every day, no matter where I was in that memorizing process, I would put the script down and look at Central Park going through. Because no matter what season, no matter what time of day or night, it was breathtaking. So I loved that part of the drive.
That's great. Was there ad-libbing allowed on show?
No, very little. If there was ad-libbing, it was done during rehearsal, and then you were told whether you could keep it or not. No, because everything we were on a stopwatch from the minute we got it on its feet in the morning to rehearse. And even the blackness between the fade-outs were also timed. It was because the commercials had to play. Sometimes what you were saying was a music or a light cue that as an actor you wouldn't even be aware of. And certainly your acting partner had to know what the heck you were saying to them, So no, there wasn't much ad-libbing. There would be slight loosening up sometimes because it's a staff of writers. And sometimes if just the cadence or something didn't seem quite right, there was that kind of leeway.
Okay, let's stop there to change the tape.